Sachas Kiddushin Daf Samach Gimel contains 3 Mishnayos, which divides the Daf into 4 separate sugyas. The first sugya, until we get to the first Mishnah, is discussing that of Davar Shalei Bo La'ilam. The Gemara is going to quote 3 opinions of 3 different Tanaim and 3 different Mishnayos that hold of the concept of Adam Makna Davar Shalei Bo La'ilam. And then the Gemara will ask, why don't we include a 4th? So let's begin. Something which does not exist in the world or does not exist in the state which is relevant to what you're trying to do with it is called a davar shalei bo la'ilam, something which hasn't come to the world. We've already seen the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says that you can take truma on something which hasn't grown yet. That should be chal when it grows, even though at this point it's a davar shalei bo la'ilam, it's still chal. So that is one opinion. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds you can do something and have it affect on something which does not exist in the world yet. Next opinion, which is quoted by the Gemara, it's Abaye who says that there are 3, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rebbe, and Rabbi Meir. So the next one is Rebbe. So that's a brisa which says on the pasuk like Sas Gir Eved El Adonov, don't imprison an Eved to his master. What does that mean? Why should we not imprison an Eved to his master? It says Asher Yinasa Elecha Me'im Adonov. He's trying to escape to you. So why should you not return him? Why should you not imprison him? So obviously not referring to a situation where someone who's not an Eved and is being imprisoned in Avdus, because the Torah wouldn't call him an Eved and wouldn't call the one who's imprisoning him his Adonov. So what's the case? So Rebbe says it's referring to somebody who purchased an Eved on the condition that he will free him when he purchased him. And therefore, he's supposed to free him, and if now he's refusing to, so that is Lei Sasger, you should not help him keep him. Says Menachem bar Yitzchak, how would that case work? He says, when I purchase you, you will be kanoi to yourself. That's what he said to the man, or he gave him a kinyan to that extent. He said, it'll be chal from now when I purchase you. So that's a classic example of davar shalei bo la'ilam. He was makna, the person, he was makna, the Eved, to himself, which means he set him free when that, at a stage when it didn't own him yet, he said, when it'll take effect, when I will purchase you. Okay, so that's Rebbe. Now, the third is Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is in a brisa, which we've seen already. We've seen a Mishnah that parallels it, and that discusses somebody who wants to be Mekadesh in Isha where he is not able to be Mekadesh her yet. He gives a Kiddushin now and says it'll be Chal when that situation is resolved. So, a guy who says to a woman, here's Kiddushin, which will be Chal when I convert, or if she's a guy when she converts, or if he's an Eved when I get freed, or if she's an Eved after you get freed, or if she's married, it should be chal after your husband dies, or if her sister is married to him, it should be chal after the sister dies, or if she has a zika to yibum, she has to get chalitza, and he says that'll be chal after you get chalitza. Now, in all these situations, the Brisa quotes a number of opinions. The Tanakama and Rabbi Yochanan Sandar say it is not Mekudeshes because it's Loi Bo La'ilam at the point that the Kiddushin is given. Rabbi Meir says that it is Mekudeshes, and that's the opinion we're quoting here, where Rabbi Meir says that a davar shalei bo la'ilam can make a kinyan. You can make a kinyan on it. Now, there's one more opinion here, which is a Yehuda Hanasi, and he says that really, al pi din, it should be Mekudeshes, but it's not, because we're afraid of creating hatred. We have a situation where if this Kiddushin happens, we'll be waiting for someone to die, either the husband or the sister. So we don't want that either. We don't want that hatred to happen, and therefore we don't allow this to work. So the Gemara asks, why don't we add Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi to the list of Tanaim who hold that you can be kind of davar shalei bo la'ilam? And the Gemara answers very simply. We already said Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is the same person. Okay, so the Gemara says there is one other opinion though, and that's Rabbi Kiva in a different brisa. And there, it's talking about where a woman makes a neder that her husband cannot have any hana from her ma'asidayim, from her earnings. Now, the halacha is that her earnings are meshubah to him as long as she is being supported by him. Whatever she earns goes to him up to a certain amount. So the Gemara says that according to the Tanakama there in the brisa, that Isser that she makes, the neder that she makes is valueless because it goes against her obligation. And therefore, he doesn't have to be made for it, doesn't have to cancel it. It's canceled anyway. Rabbi Kiva, though, says it is wise for him to make that hafara because anything which he earns above and beyond what she's obligated, it will be chal in neder, and he won't be able to have enough from that. So if he's made for it, then he could avoid that issue. So the Gemara says, however, that is all Loi Bo La'ilam. That is being chal now on earnings which he hasn't earned yet. It's not in the world. So there you see that Rabbi Kiva holds that it is chal on a davar shalei bo la'ilam. So the Gemara answers, as we've seen in Maseches Nedarim, here we're not talking about where she's makdish the earnings, but where she's makdish her hands. She says, my hands go to Shemayim, as for all the work that they will perform and the money that will be earned from it, that becomes hektish and that becomes like hektish. It becomes a neder automatically. And her hands do exist in the world, and therefore that's not a problem of a davar shlev ha'olam. Therefore, we can't add Rabbi Akiva here to the list. We now begin our next Mishnah, which discusses where he promises to do work. So let's quote the Mishnah, and then we'll see how the Gemara learns it. So the Mishnah quotes two situations where he wants to be Mekadesh an Isha, and he promises he will do work. The work could be that he will speak to the government for her on her behalf, or that he'll work for her as a worker for a day. Now, the phrase that the Mishnah uses, that he says, being Miskadesh, is to me, al menas, on the condition that I do these things. And the halacha, the Mishnah says, is that if he does them, then she's Mekadeshes, and if not, not. Which seems to imply that the Kiddushin is valid. So says Reish Lakish, the Gemara now begins, says, Reish Lakish, this work and the speaking to the king cannot be the Kiddushin. The job that he's doing is not Kiddushin. The case here is where he gave her Kiddushin. He gave her a ring. And he made a condition. The condition will be that I'm going to do this for you. That's the situation here. But this itself cannot be this Kiddushin. And the Gemara asks questions, and Reish Lakish explains. We've seen a discussion earlier as to when somebody works, is that and that is, when does the payment for the work become due? Is every bit of work earn a payment that is due and payable in that moment, but we don't actually pay it until the end, but it's owed right away, which therefore means that at the time you're actually going to pay for it, at the time that you come to be collected from, it's already owed, and all you have is a monetary loan. You have an obligation. You have to pay the loan. It's the money is as if it was loaned to you and you have to pay it. If that's the situation, then by him being Mekadesher with that, he's really being Mekadesher by forgiving the money that she owes him. And we already said being Mekadesh with a forgivement of an obligation is not a Kiddushin. You have to give something. You can't just forgive a loan or forgive an obligation. So according to that opinion, you couldn't be Mekadeshes with work. And that's what Rava is saying is a pshat in this Mishnah here. This work you can't be Mekadesh with. And this Tana holds Yesh l'schiras m'tchila v'atzayif. Now the other opinion is that ein l'schiras el b'sayif, which means that you only owe the money when the work is finished. Which means that at the time that the work is finished and coming to be Mekadesh, that's when it's due, and that's when you're giving her the activity. And at that moment, by giving it to her and not asking for payment for it, there you're giving something, and therefore that Kiddushin should work. The Gemara quotes two brises that hold that way. One is discussing the schar of giving her a ride in a wagon, on a ship, or on a donkey. And the brisa says that if he says, I'm going to be Mekadesh you in lieu of payment for riding on the donkey, the ship, or the wagon that I did already, so that's no good, because that's being Michael, a previous obligation. If he's saying, be Mekadesh to me in exchange for the fact that I am going to give you a ride, so there it is good. And that's the situation of work. And it says there, the phrase is bischar, is payment for what I'm about to do. So this brisa says that it's good. And Rav explains, because this brisa holds ein l'schiras el b'sayif, and therefore it is able to be chal. Another brisa that holds the same way is where she says to him, I'll be miskadeshes to you with the schar that you're going to sit with me, or that you'll make jokes for me, or that you'll dance for me, or you'll build something for me. And we evaluate these activities. If it's worth a pruta, then it's good. And again, you can't tell me that this is referring to where she got Kiddushin besides, and this was a Tanai, because this one says bischar. The first one said bischar, and the second one said that we evaluate how much it's worth. So obviously that is the kesef Kiddushin. That has to be a pruta. There isn't a separate ring that he's giving her. That is the Kiddushin. So Rava says, yeah, this opinion holds ein l'schiras el b'sayif, but our Mishnah holds yesh l'schiras m'tchila v'atzayif, and therefore there has to be a separate ring. Now, how does Reish Lakish know? How does Reish Lakish, not Rava, how does Reish Lakish know that this is referring to a situation that this brisa, that this Mishnah holds yesh l'schiras m'tchila v'atzayif, and therefore there's a separate ring? Why doesn't he just learn that it's ein l'schiras el b'sayif and this is the kesef Kiddushin? So the reason is because it says almanas. If it meant to say this is the case of Kiddushin, it should say bischar. It doesn't say bischar. Bischar would mean that as payment for this work, but that's not what's happening. It's almanas, it's a condition, and there's something else which is the case of Kiddushin, and that must be because he holds that this work cannot be the case of Kiddushin, because yesh l'schiras m'tchila v'atzayif. Now we get our next Mishnah, which discusses what happens if when the man gives Kiddushin, it makes it Tanai that my father agrees. So there's four possibilities as to what happens. So he says, here is Kiddushin on the Tanai that my father agrees, Amanas sheyirtza Abba, If the father agrees, it's Kiddushin. If the father does not agree, so it's not Kiddushin. If the father dies, so he didn't have a chance to agree or not agree, so the Mishnah says it is Kiddushin. We're going to have to figure out how that fits. And the last halacha is that if the son dies, then before the father had a chance to agree or to not agree, so we teach the father, say, I don't agree, and that way she will never be married, and she will not have to worry about Yibum and Chalitza. Now begin the Gemara, and the Gemara wants to know what was meant when we said on the condition that the father agrees. What does agreement look like? So the Gemara has 4 possibilities. The first one is that the father says, yes, I agree. The second one is that the father is silent. He allows it, he hears, he's silent, he doesn't do anything, then it's chal. Third possibility is that as long as the father hasn't protested, it's not clear what happens. Only when we know that the father is not going to protest for sure, that is when there's clarity. But as long as he doesn't protest, the protest messes things up. And as long as he doesn't protest, he still can. And the fourth possibility is that he's giving his father 30 days. If he doesn't protest within 30 days, then time's up and it's chal. So let's work through the Mishnah and see which of these cases fits. So the first one, which we said, is that the father has to say yes. If the father says yes, the problem is so then why, when the father dies, do we say that there is Kiddushin? The father hasn't said yes. So let's try the second possibility, that the father has to be silent. So if the father is silent, so then the problem is, so then if the son dies, why do we have to teach the father to say no? It's enough if the father will be silent. That is called agreeing. So therefore, the Gemara says we're going to have to try a third possibility, and that would be that the father can say, I make a macha. As long as the father doesn't say a macha, it's indeterminate. So no, the Gemara doesn't say how that applies to the first case. Rashi says the first case can't be referring to that, because when he says Al Menasa, my father doesn't make a macha, Al Menasa, my father agrees, which we're saying means that he never makes a macha. We still don't know, because he could always make a macha at any point. Then the Mishnah can't paskin that as long as the father didn't make a macha, the Kiddushin's chal. It's not chal, because it's kind of chal, it's maybe chal, but we don't know what's going to happen. So says the Gemara, you're right. So that case has to be that on the condition that the father is quiet. However, the latter case, where we said that we teach the father to say that I make a macha, that has to be referring to where he has to make a macha, where that's where Amanas lo yimcha abba. If he makes a macha, that is when he rejects. And so it says that we would teach him, if the son had died, make a macha, because you still have that ability. So the Gemara says, you mean to say that the first case and the last case are talking about different situations, different meanings? So the Gemara says, yeah, it's talking about different situations. And the Gemara says, so you kind of see from here, Rav Yanai says, yeah, Reish Lakish says it's different situations. So Gemara says we would rather say that the Tana of the Mishnah is one person who's talking about different cases, even though it doesn't sound like it, rather than say it's one case and it's different people. We could have said that it's one case where the son said, Amanas, Sheyirtza Abba, and the Machlokes is the first case is talking about one Tana who assumes that he means Shelo Yishtek, and the last case is talking about a different Tana who assumes that he means Shelo Yimche. And those would be different understandings of what he means, but we'd rather say it's one person with different cases rather than different people each interpreting the same case in a different way. Now the Gemara then says, the Rav Yosef Bar Ami says you could all fit it in if you use the fourth explanation, which is on the condition that the father doesn't say anything within 30 days. So then everything fits. Because if the father agrees, means if the father didn't protest for 30 days, then it's chal. If the father does not agree, means he did protest within 30 days, that's not chal. If the father dies within the 30 days, so then the halacha is he's not going to protest anymore, so it is chal. What's the problem? The last case is where the son dies within 30 days. Now we say to the father, quickly make your rachal while you still can, in order to make sure that there's no yibum measures over here. This concludes our commentary on the second Mishnah. Now we begin the third Mishnah, which discusses a man who accepted Kiddushin for his daughter, and he doesn't know from whom. Who was Mekadesh the daughter? So the Mishnah says, someone says, I was Mekadesh my daughter, and I don't know from who. And then someone else comes along and says, I'm the guy who are Mekabel Kiddushin for me, so I'm married to your daughter. So he's believed. Second case is if you have two people who come, and they both say it was me. So obviously she can't marry either of them, because she might be married to the other one. But if she wants to go free from them, they both have to give a get. We do believe them to the extent that they both need to give a get. However, if one of them agrees, then the other one can marry her. And the one who agreed can give the get. Now, the Gemara begins, and the Gemara introduces a machlokes. What do we mean when we say that the one man who came and said it was me, I was Mkandasher? What do we mean when we say he's believed? So according to Rav, he's only believed to give her the get, and we'll assume that he was really the guy, and now she's free. We don't have to worry that she was Mekudesh to someone else. However, we don't believe him to allow him to marry her, because as far as that's concerned, to actually be matir her to him, we're afraid he's lying and someone else is the real husband. Why do we believe him to give her the get? Because the person he doesn't get anything out of it. Why would he lie and do a sin and give her a get and free her to the world, and he's not even the one? He's making her do an avera, he's doing an avera, and he gets nothing from it. That is Rav's opinion. Rav Asi says, no, he's even believed to say that he was the one and she could be married to him. We assume that he's saying the truth. Now, however, Rav Asi even agrees, and therefore everyone agrees, and if she herself was Makabel Kiddushin, she says she doesn't know from whom, there, no one's believed to say that it was me. Rashi explains, and the Gemara is evident later, the difference is that when the father was Makabel Kiddushin, he's always afraid he's going to get caught. The father will remember who it was someone else, and be revealed that he was lying. However, his wife, if she herself says she forgot, she's not going to snitch on him. If she remembers it was someone else, she's not going to rat him out. She'll protect him even if someone else comes. If the real husband comes, the wife will cover for him, and therefore he's not afraid to lie. Now, the Gemara says, L'chari, you have a right from our Mishnah against Rav and like Rav Asi, because the Mishnah brings a second case where you have two people who came, and there, if one wants, he can marry her. Why is that one allowed to marry her? Just because the other one agrees to give a get, why should we believe this one? So the Gemara says, no, there it's not a proof. Because since he's coming together with another person, if he was lying, he wouldn't be brave enough to say it was me, because it was probably the other person, and then he'll get caught right there on the spot. So obviously he must be telling the truth. However, if he's alone, then he could be lying, at least according to Rav. Okay, now says the Gemara, there's a brayso that's explicitly like Rav Asi. It says if somebody's Mekadesh his daughter, and he says, I don't know to whom, someone comes and said it was me, he is believed even to marry her. If he marries her and someone else comes and says, no, it was me, that person is not believed to make the original husband aser on the woman. Now, if the woman herself says, I was Makabel Kiddushin, I don't know from whom, and someone else comes and says it was me, there he's not neman to marry her, because she will cover for him. The Gemara now quotes another machlokes Rav and Rav Asi, and we're going to have to see how these two machlokes fit together. This machlokes is about if the father, when the father says I was Makabel Kiddushin for my daughter, is he believed to the extent that if the daughter is mezana, we'll give her a skila, like any Nara Hamarasa who's mezana? So according to Rav, no, we don't believe. We believe the father to aser her on anybody else, but we don't believe the father to the extent to actually give the daughter a skila if she's mezana. According to Rav Asi, we believe the father, the Torah was maimin him, and therefore for Misa as well, and she will get skila if she goes and she is mezana. Rav Ashi added, however, if she says on her own that she was Makabel Kiddushin, then we won't give her skila just based on her own word. Now, says Rav Asi, a casual observer will think my two psakim are contradictory. Because if you look at whether or not we trust the person who comes and says it was me, so if the father was Makabel Kiddushin, we say, we'll believe him. Meaning we're not so impressed with the father's Kiddushin. We don't really trust the father that a Kiddushin happened that will aser this lady on someone who comes and says, I was the one. However, if she herself was Makabel Kiddushin, then we very much believe that she's Mekudeshes. So we much more believe she's Mekudeshes if she herself says it. And if someone who comes and says it was me, we're afraid it wasn't, and we're going to aser him. However, as far as giving skila, it's the opposite. When the father was Makabel Kiddushin, we will give skila. That means we really believe that she's married. When she says she's Makabel Kiddushin, we won't give skila. That means we don't believe she's married. So it seems to be contradictory. Says Rav Asi, it's not really a kash on me. The father has a special nemonis in the Torah. It says, "Biti nasati leshazu." The father is believed. She herself has no nemonis. Now, the father's nemonis will cause her to get skila because the Torah believed him. She herself has no nemonis. She can't get skila for that. However, as far as asering the guy, so in the case of where the father, so like we said, we know that he will be mirsus, he'll be afraid to lie, and therefore we believe him. In the case of the woman, though, when she herself is Makabel Kiddushin, she'll cover for him, so therefore he won't be afraid to lie. Now the Isser still exists, because she has to do Shavinav Shechatich Desur, she has to act as if she was married because she said that she was. The Gemara now ends off by quoting one opinion, and that is Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says in both cases there is no skila, whether the father was Makabel Kiddushin or the girl herself was Makabel Kiddushin. And that's Rav Chisda, according to his opinion, that a father is never believed to say how old the child is as far as Einchin. So Gemara quotes Rav Chisda's opinion elsewhere. If he says that his son was 9 years old in one day, and therefore his bia counts as a din bia, and anybody who is bia with him could be over an Isser, Kares, or Misa, and have to bring a carbon if it was a Shegeg. Or similarly, if his daughter, if the father says she was 3 years old, then the same halachas apply. So as far as carbon, he's believed, and whoever would be chayav a carbon because of them is chayav. However, to get makas or to get all kinds of ancient Misa that we do not give out. And as a Bryce says, like a Chisda, if someone says that his son is 13 years old and his nether counts, or his daughter is 12 years old and her nether counts, is believed as far as the actual keeping the halacha of the neder and the chayrim, and to make something hektish or to owe an actual erech, but as far as to get makas based on that or to get an anish based on that, he's not believed.